45 years old, managing director for a major firm, passed away of a heart ailment. As we climb that ladder, we're more likely to develop anxiety and depression.
You grow up in Detroit where we're the Motor City and you think, I'm supposed to be in my car. You know, my friend said, this is crazy that you don't have a bike. And so they literally loaned me a $30 bike, and I fell in love with it.
Behavior change shouldn't be something you need to endure, because we change best by feeling good. If we change best by feeling bad and beating ourselves up, we would have already had the thing that we wanted.
This is The Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Detroit's Police Activities League has been around since 1969. The goal for Detroit POW is to make sure kids and families are supported with the tools to take them through life. I was a part of Detroit POW actually as a kid. It was rewarding. It was fun to hang out with friends and like-minded families and be in a community where you felt seen and heard. The National Police Activity League recently announced the appointment of native Detroiter Dr. Galen Duncan to lead its mental health and wellness program. Dr. Duncan spoke to me about the legacy of Detroit POW and how the national chapter will help reinvigorate the local affiliate. We began the conversation highlighting Galen and his upbringing in Detroit.
Yeah, I played a little bit of everything growing up, and I was fortunate enough to have a dad who was a high school basketball coach. And so my dad was the coach at Murray Wright High School, George Baby Duncan. He was there for 25 years, so I basically grew up inside of those halls at Murray Wright. But that's where I found Pal, was one of his players, actually. I was hanging out with one of his players. I was a young guy trying to be like him and ended up in an arcade. And a long story later, I was recruited to come and play Pal by by Coach Tucker, Joe Tucker. And we didn't know that Coach Joe Tucker was also Officer Tucker at the time.
How cool so that's the thing that oftentimes when we think about PAL, and I think about, of course, it's the Police Athletic League, and this is the Detroit chapter that we're talking about. But there is a national chapter, which is something that I didn't know. I just assumed that it was just a Detroit thing because we always had it growing up. Can you just talk to a little bit about your dad? Murray Wright doesn't even exist anymore.
No, it's no longer around. But if you've ever heard of Robert Tractor Trailer or Johnny Davis or any of those greats, Ed Norvell, that played at Murray Wright High School, my dad was their coach. And what it afforded me was the opportunity to be competitive, to learn how to play the game the right way, but also to have big brothers who could kind of negotiate and help me negotiate, learning how to be a young man too. And that's kind of how, like I said before, that's how I ended up on the Detroit PAL steps. And, it's like full circle for me to come all the way back around now and to be working for National PAL, which, you're right, a lot of people didn't know that National PAL that existed, and that's a shame, and that's our fault. And so we have a new regime at National PAL, and there's a group of us who are out and we're set to make a change in what the rhetoric is about what National PAL is. We're here to support, create programs, and we're going to start with mental health.
And the cool thing, too, I've been hearing a lot about just organizations around the city of Detroit, whether it's a national chapter or a local chapter, a part of a larger affiliate. I'm hearing a lot of Detroiters come back home in some way. They're helping in some way. Did you feel, like you said, it fell into your hands, it fell into your lap, but did you feel as if it was meant to be almost?
Yeah, it was definitely. Well, if you ever lived here in any way, shape, or form, you are attached. And there is something that stays on you and won't leave you. And so as far as I can run, it always brings me back. This is always going to be home. I may not live here, but what goes on in Detroit is very important to me, and the youth that we serve are first on my list.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk, of course, about PAL and the sports and all the offerings right now. I'm thinking about just in terms of young people, youth, and where sports are right now in terms of them getting into sports outside of their schools. And right now it's become big business, big money to get into some of these sports. It's hard for a lot of kids to get into sports now. The accessibility is not as there as it used to be. Even 10 years ago, it's not the same. So can you talk about how PAL wants to position itself, or if it does want to position itself in a way for it to be more accessible for kids?
Well, yeah, even by our name alone, it used to be Police Athletic League. Now it's activity in the middle of that. And what we understand is that to reach young people, we have to do more than just give them sports. We have to give them STEM programming. We have to offer them opportunities to find, vocational opportunities, work opportunities. Many of them want to work with computers. Hey, we got some kids that want to become DJs. Like, we can't just make them play basketball, right? And so, even at that level, if you think about it, all these kids run to AAU and they go to spend all this money, and most of them aren't going to be college or professional basketball players. We want to take athletics back to what it used to be, a meeting ground for young people to grow as people and to not focus necessarily, um, on making it to the pros. Now, hey, if they make it, if there's a Brandon Graham in the group, or if there's a Jaden Hardy in the group, let's let them go. Let's follow him, and let's make Sean Respert who he's supposed to be, right? But there's a million other kids who aren't going to reach that level, and so we have to meet them where they are.
It's something we hear about all of the time, especially now with the NIL and college sports, the transfer portal, and just so many different things that are happening with young people in sports and that foundation that's needed there. We've heard a lot from coaches and all the other folks. The foundation's not there. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that you plan on implementing those activities now as you go forward?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We are creating a national program called GRIT. And GRIT is basically a mental health awareness program. And we're going to provide resources, opportunities, and training for not just the young people at PAL, but the staff, and volunteers and people who come in directly in direct contact with these young people. We're going to teach everyone how to support everyone. And so it's going to be, I envision a big mental health love fest where we're all making sure that we're all okay.
And once again, speaking of the city of Detroit, and we are in a unique transition. We're going through a mayoral race. We're about to go through a governor's race as well. So we have a lot of things that are happening, but we see a lot of positive things happening within our neighborhoods, within communities, community centers, so on and so forth. Can you just talk about being a part of that expansion as well and being a part of Detroit's, not necessarily resurgence because we've always been here, but a part of the growth of Detroit?
I think on a national level, on a national level, people are viewing Detroit in a very different way. I get a chance to travel the United States all the time, and I go abroad. And some of the best conversations I've had with people are at airports or in restaurants or maybe at a conference or on a beach where people are saying, I went to Detroit last year, and it is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, what is your expectation? And so I think what people have to kind of get away from is listening to what maybe people have said about Detroit before, but taking a visit yourself and seeing what a beautiful city this is, and the amazing people that live here, and the friendliness and the welcomeness of the people that are involved in Detroit politics, and restaurants, and just the Detroit culture as a whole, that people who spend time here ultimately leave here saying, like, hey, that was a really cool place.
It is just a really cool place. When's the last time you were able to get back?
I make it back, every 3 or 4 months. My kids are still here, so I make sure that I drop in and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, even though they're adults.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're always someone's kid. You know what I mean? We're someone's kid out there somehow.
For sure.
But my last few questions to you here is just sticking on the importance of mental health and especially sports and using sports. We're gonna stick with sports. We're gonna go to the other activities as well, but just sticking with sports for now. The importance of that for mental health and emotional regulation and different things like that. Can you talk about how that does help in a young person's life?
Yeah, 100%. So I talked a little bit about the idea of grit. And I've been asked by numerous people, did you steal that from the Detroit Lions?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did not. Actually, even though I worked there for 11 years, I've been using the term grit for 11 years. So if anything, Detroit borrowed it from me. But I'm okay with that because they're proving it to be right. They're proving the theory to be exactly what I want it to be. And there's certain concepts in the theory. So the G in grit is growth mindset. Basically, what we want to do with young people is show them something they haven't seen before, something different. That means taking them on trips to places that they've never been before. For example, there's a young lady, and I don't have permission to share her story, but I will say that there's a young lady who was a PAL kid when I was a PAL kid, whose first trip outside of Detroit off the east side was with a PAL program. And she said if she hadn't gone on that trip, she would never have known what it was like to be outside of the city. And she doesn't know if there would have been another opportunity for her to see the world like that. Now, her daughter is a WNBA player who was drafted very high, and is traveling the world, making money, playing the sport that she loves. So, growth mindset. The R is resilience. We want young people to be more resilient. We want them to understand that life is going to give you speed bumps, but you got to hit them. You got to take the bump and you got to keep going. There is no quit. All right. Those types of speed bumps will make you better later. The I in grit is for initiative. During the pandemic, and quite frankly, because our kids are so attached to their mobile devices and things, they lose the initiative to make friends or to gain contact with people or to be out front as a person and not behind their keyboard. We want to create that initiative. And, we don't want to have passive young people. We want to have tenacious young people. And so the T in grit is tenacity. We want them to be tenacious in everything that they do. And so grit is our program, and we plan to roll it out nationwide and provide young people with resources to make them better.
Interpersonal communication or face-to-face conversations and the importance of getting out in community and talking to people. Can you talk about the importance of that, especially in young people, in building those skills to go out and be tenacious in this world?
Yeah, well, we're actually modeling that behavior because, look, to create a program like this, you can't just, it can't be a bunch of 50-year-olds sitting around a table telling, sitting around saying, this is what kids need. No, that's old school thinking. That's old school framework. We've been surveying kids all over the country with a sweet QR code that we have, allowing them to be able to express their feelings and what they want to see in this program. And so right now we've got, about 200 responses to what they would like to see programming wise. And we're going to continue to ask those questions because if we don't know what they want, we don't know what we need to give them. I will say this. National PAL is working really hard to make sure that the chapters have an opportunity to experience what these young people should be able to experience and what they deserve. And Detroit PAL is an exemplary program. They are top notch. They have shown up for these young people continuously. You can see it on their social media. What I would do is two things. I would challenge people to donate and get involved with Detroit PAL. Don't sit back and listen and read about it. Go down to the field and see some games and see what they're doing there and see the programming initiatives that they're doing. And you know what? Either put your volunteer hours behind it or put some money behind it because young people need the support. And additionally, I would say that any organization that calls themselves a child-facing organization, if they're not focusing on mental health, I don't know what they're focusing on.
Dr. Galen Duncan leads the mental health and wellness program for the Detroit Athletic League, the national affiliate. Really looking forward to seeing those summer games. From the WDET newsroom, the city of Detroit is accepting requests from residents for tree plantings in their neighborhoods as an effort to improve tree canopy in the city. Savion Stevens, the tree planting program manager for the city, says trees can help improve residents' quality of life. Stevens says trees also trap pollutants such as dirt, ash, pollen, and smoke. The city plants up to 14,000 trees annually through this program. Coming up, a local campaign is trying to protect kids from sexual abuse, and we'll hear from a leader of that campaign next. We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay right there.